This is what I hear a lot from executives. Mark, doing strategy work is messy, it's complicated. I know I have to do it, but I'm dreading doing it because it will be days, if not weeks, of deliberations and discussions, endless discussions and no decisions. So, well, in reality, that's true. I mean, up to a certain point, rebooting your company strategy is a complex process indeed. But the good news is that there is a quick way of doing it that will help you in a couple of important ways. First, it will help you break through the inertia in your executive team. Second, it will remove the dread of doing strategy work. And third, it will give you a breath of fresh air in a stalemate or in a situation when you're stuck. So often, actually, executive teams get stuck because of the number of strategic issues that they have to consider and to deal with, and making decisions about them is not always very easy. So what is needed is a way to get clarity on where to focus your efforts, what to do next, and how to prioritize all your strategic challenges. So this is what we will be discussing today. How can you get people moving in the first place? And I've got an exercise for this which I call fast strategy, and here is how it works. There are 3 steps. Step number 1, you ask the people on your executive team to write down one statement on what they think the strategy should be. And you need to make sure that it's very specific and concrete. So for example, we should expand in this market, the US for example, through a partnership with company ABC. So not something like we need to grow, for example, which is way too generic to be able to discuss it and actually do something about it. So step number 2, once you have these statements, you get everybody together and you discuss the various statements and you try to understand them in detail, try to understand what is really behind them, the logic behind them. So for each of these statements, you should try to answer: what is the opportunity or the challenge really here? What is the strategic move you're suggesting? And what are the specific actions needed to make progress on this or to implement this? You can actually also dig a little bit deeper with questions like, what's our ambition here? Who is the customer or the stakeholder this is for? What would we or are we going to offer? And how would we do all of this? And it's very important here to give every statement the time it deserves. So don't rush this part. Every idea should get the airtime it needs to really be able to understand it. And doing all of this will already establish some kind of hierarchy of ideas which become more or less clear. And this is then actually where the magic happens. So in the next step, you're going to do a very specific type of prioritization, which I call the 4 types of strategic moves. So once you have all these statements, well, for each of the statements, I'd like you to ask whether the challenge or opportunity is clear and the strategic move is clear or not. And what do I mean by is clear? So what I mean is that it's obvious, first of all, what execution should look like. So everybody agrees who should lead these initiatives. You are clear on the resources you need. You are clear on what the next steps should be. You are clear on what success looks like and in what time frame you'd like to get something done. And most importantly also, being clear means that everybody on the team agrees and is aligned that this should be done. So this is really the no-brainer kind of actions. If there are different opinions, then by definition, it's not clear. Let me maybe give you a couple of examples. So data is a favorite at the moment. Every company says data, or every time I do this exercise, data comes up as one of the statements. But just saying data is not really helpful. So what is it about data? What problem or opportunity is there? And what needs to be done about it to solve it or to seize the opportunity? Digital, by the way, is another one along these lines that I hear a lot. Or talent. I recently worked with a client who had a big issue with finding talent, like many companies have these days. But then digging a little bit deeper, we discussed the various reasons of the lack of talent. So like company image, salary, availability in general, and other usual suspects and usual topics, until we actually came to the real issue. So the real issue in this case was that the company is in the media industry and its headquarters are in a city that doesn't have a big media industry. So meaning they're really just is no or very limited talent available locally. So the move finally was to open offices in other cities to be able to recruit that needed talent. But without understanding the problem really, we couldn't have come up with this move as a viable alternative. So all this is just to say that it might need some time to get to the bottom of a topic. And once you've been through all the topics, just draw up a simple table on the whiteboard, list all of them or put them in an Excel sheet. It doesn't really matter how you do it. And then you check off every time there is clarity on both the problem or opportunity and the strategic move. And then you sort all of these ideas into what I call the 4 types of strategic moves table, which will help you to visualize what needs to happen next and where you need to prioritize. So if both the challenge and the opportunity are clear and the strategic move is clear, this is an execute. There's no doubt that this is something that's just waiting to be done. If the challenge or opportunity is clear but the move is unclear, or there might be different opinions about what the move should be, then this is something where you should experiment. So you should test these different opinions out there to see which one actually works. And here you will need to allocate some resources, run the pilot to find out what kind of move might be appropriate. If both are unclear, you need to explore the challenge. You need to better understand the challenge. So there might be something here, but you don't know for sure, and it's worth spending a little bit of time with it to find out what's really going on. And finally, and this is actually an interesting one, sometimes the move is clear, but there is no challenge or the opportunity is unclear. And in this case, I say eliminate it. It's most likely to be a pet project that doesn't really solve a challenge or it doesn't really seize any opportunity. So let me give you some examples again here. So going back to the talent example. So as there were several opinions as to where to open these offices, some experimentation was needed, and in this case it was testing where talent was quite simply available and where not. Another example, working with the same company, there was an idea about an opportunity, but nobody on the team knew enough about the potential customer segment to be able to really tell what's going on there and whether there is really an opportunity or not. But there was a general feeling that there is an opportunity. So we engaged in some exploration, talking to these customers to see whether they have a need and whether they would be interested in a potential solution by this customer. Now, depending on the resources, the time and the money that you have available and that you need for these various options, to focus on execute, experiment and explore might be something along the lines of 70, 20, 10, for example, with the bulk of the resources probably going into execution of the clearest initiatives. Experimentation should get the proper attention. So if you want to do something there, make sure you have enough resources behind to really get to some valid results that you can actually use for decision making. And exploration can be quite simple. So basically it means spending a couple of hours researching a topic, maybe talking to a couple of customers and following up with everybody just a few weeks later. And when working with clients, we often assign the different actions to sprints. So we create a backlog and then we decide what to work on the next sprint. And depending on the time, the resources available, and we decide what to focus on now, next, and later. So there you have it. This is what I call fast strategy and the 4 types of strategic moves. So it doesn't have to be very complicated to get started and to get clarity about where you should focus your efforts. For sure, it's only the beginning of the journey and only beginning the strategy discussion. It doesn't replace having a proper strategy, but at least it gets you going. And this is one of the great benefits of this, is that it gets people out of their silos, gets everybody together, gets everybody out of the day-to-day rut, and it forces all these priorities and often high-flying ideas into a somewhat rigorous framework and subjects them to some scrutiny. So, my invitation to you, go ahead, try it out, and I'd like to hear whether it has worked for you and what the results are. All right, see you soon.